everyone, and welcome back to Pod in My Noggin. Today, we have a special guest, RG Enzon. RG, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Love being here.
So, RG, I was looking at the form that you filled out, and I found components of your story to be really interesting and really fit into what we're trying to do here on Pod My Noggin, and this highlight stories of struggle and then people who have been able to take that and turn it around. And I think for you, your struggle started earlier, and we're going to get into that. So you immigrated to the US, you stated at 17. Let's talk about what was happening, where you immigrated from, and what was that choice, that decision? How did you get there?
Okay, awesome. Well, so yeah, I was 17 when myself and my family migrated to the United States. Um, as far as the choice, it wasn't really much of a choice. I was, a minor, and I think it was more of a decision that my parents made because they wanted to have a better future for me and my sibling. Because I migrated from the Philippines, and
Okay.
as you know, it's basically a third world country. So really, like you can have multiple degrees and all that stuff, but if you don't have the kind of connections, or like if you're not a millionaire or whatever, it's gonna be harder for you to build off from that. So the in the because like my dad has like multiple degrees, same thing with my mom, but like they weren't exactly getting like a high profit income from like their 9 to 5 job. And it even came to the point that like my mom, she built up kind of like a side business on top of her job just
Okay.
to kind of like supplement like the living circumstances and all that stuff. Like it wasn't really like 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 poverty kind of deal, but also you can just tell the difference between if you're in the USA compared to like if you are in the Philippines.
So, yeah, so I have had the privilege of not just working, but knowing many Filipino human beings throughout my lifetime. And um, I have heard stories, about living over there. Um, Not necessarily a terrible environment, but not necessarily an environment where you can thrive per se.
Right.
And one of the things that I often struggled so much with these wonderful people that I would meet is that, they had families back in the Philippines and they were here working, sending so much of their money that they made because the value over there was
Way different.
significant,
Yeah.
right? Significantly different. Like a $10 an hour over there would be. Now, I do know also that recently, over the last few years and such, the value of the dollar has gone up in the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're 17, so you were in school.
Yes. I was already in college back then. Because before I even hit college, I skipped like I think 2 grades. Was like if you compare the like the American education system compared to like Philippines, um I don't know if this is the same in Canada, but do you guys have a middle school in Canada? Like you
Well, it
would have
depends on what you mean by
preschool,
middle
grade school.
school.
It would be like grades 7 and 8.
Yes, so we do, yes.
Okay, so in the Philippines, you don't have that. They basically just introduced that a couple of years ago, but for the longest time when I was there studying, you don't have that. So technically speaking, like I skipped like 4 grades in total instead of 2 because of that middle grade, middle school difference. You don't have that, and then you would just go from grade school, grade 6, and then you go from grade 7 to 10. That would be your high school. No, no middle school stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
So the normal average to graduate in the Philippines or would be like what, 15, 16 years old?
Yeah, pretty much. If you are in high school, maybe like 17. Sometimes
Okay.
like because they do make you repeat. Obviously, just like any other's educational system, they do make you repeat if you're kind of like lacking in like some areas and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, so for me, skip 2 grades, but because of that system, um, I skip another 2 grades, I guess. Um, and then when I got to the U.S., I was incoming third year in college at 17, and then that was like a different struggle on its own because I was looking for like community colleges or like universities who would basically take in my transcripts and all that stuff. But because I'm I'm young and like the American system's education is basically what they wanted me to do was like, oh, you're too young, you're going back to first year. And I was like, there's no way. Because like I skipped 2 grades, so maybe I'm doing well in school. I'm not being arrogant about it or anything. But also it's like, why would I want to waste time doing that?
So you skip 2 grades in the Philippines. You're technically third year college by the time you come to the US, and they
Well, I
don't want
already
to.
am. Yeah, because I'm already in college in the Philippines.
Yeah, so, but they didn't want to put you
Acknowledge
sort
me.
of in a similar place
Correct.
over here in
Yeah.
community or university.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. So I was
that's
like,
kind of
there's
like,
no way.
I mean, that speaks to a larger issue, I think, that I have with so many of our immigration laws because we share that, like, our immigration in Canada is different than it is in the US, but there are some sort of things that are shared,
Yeah.
philosophies, if you will. And so I struggle with that. So back to before leaving the Philippines, I'm assuming this was a conversation in the family or something that was talked about for a period of time. You booked flights and came across to the US. I'm always so interested in this story because did you know people here?
No. We actually don't have any family in the United States. We only knew family friends, but not exactly like relatives and like the sense of like blood.
So your parents had to figure out like a where they were going in the US.
Yeah, like I think they knew what they have plans about for like a couple of months, but not definitely not like a long-term plan. All they knew was that they wanted us to have a better way to live. And so in for immigration, it's easier for a parent to bring their kids if they're still minors. If once you cross that 18, like once you reach 18 years old, you would basically have to wait years and years and years compared to like if you have a minor child. So I think that was kind of like the biggest reason why they pushed for the immigration to happen. That's why because I was a couple months away from hitting 18 years old.
Wow. Wow. And I just find it really sort of a, like, even the thought of it just to be a bit scary, right? So for someone who's 17, was it scary for you to come? Was it exciting? Were you mad? What were your feelings
I
around that?
I think it's definitely a mix of those feelings. Like yes, like happy definitely because it's a new experience and all that stuff. Sad because you get to leave your friends, and then you get anxiety because you don't know anybody here. And
Yeah.
I mean, like like realistically speaking, if you hear like if when you hear me talk, like my accent's still there. But just imagine me when I first got in the U.S. Like my accent is just like you know what I mean. Like
Of
because
course.
like you know a lot of like Filipino friends and all this stuff, and like the accent is like super hard. So that was my accent. So like just like trying to talk to anybody just gave me like so much anxiety and all that stuff. And
I can
then
only
yeah.
imagine. How many years ago now are we looking at when this happened?
Ooh. I think like over 15 years ago. So I
So
think
15 years ago, you were
yeah,
17. So you came here, you tried to get into college. They were saying go back to first year. I
yeah,
remember your reaction. It was very much like, nah. So
yeah.
what happened?
So remember, like during this time, I'm new to the U.S. and all I wanted to do back then, because like I'm still a teenager essentially, and all I wanted to do back then was to go back to the Philippines because that's where my are at. A lot of my family is there, and honestly, like it's a comfort zone thing. Like I don't know anybody in the U.S. I don't know, like I don't like the way that you spend money in the U.S. compared to the Philippines. Like or like you whenever you just want to go somewhere, like here you need a car, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Philippines, like you can literally walk and then you can meet your friends. You can walk and then you go to like the next, I don't know, mall or something. And if not, like there's a lot of very affordable transportation options. But yeah, so anyway, going back to the college thing, I definitely was so angry about it. And then I remember I wanted to convince my dad and my mom so bad that like, hey, look, I'm not, I'm not redoing 2 years of college, um, just because the education system here is saying I need to. And then
Mm-hmm.
it had been like a couple of months and all that stuff. And then I guess I finally won, quote unquote. And then they let me eventually go back to the Philippines. Luckily, like the school that I was in the Philippines, um, we have a trimester. It's not like I don't know how it works here. I don't know if it's like just 2 semesters or like four or whatever.
There's two official semesters, then
Okay,
there are intersessions.
got you. So like kind of like summer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is the same there, but I did IT back in college, and then the school that I was in, they're only focusing on IT, like computer stuff and engineering. And the way it worked was like we had three semesters. So it's a trimester school, and then you also have I want to say like a 2 or 3 week summer school if you want to do that. So I
Okay.
guess it kind of worked out because like if like the school was gonna be like 6 months at a time, or like 4 to 6 months, it wouldn't have worked out with like the immigration laws. But because it's a trimester, I think that was like a big deciding factor for my parents to agree to like let me go there. So essentially, what I was doing is that I'm enrolled in college in the Philippines, third year. Finally, I didn't have to repeat, and then I would go back to the U.S. after the um school ended,
Okay.
and then so that I would do that every end of the semester. Um, and I know, like looking back, it sounds expensive to do because of the flights and all that stuff. But with me doing that, I think that is way more affordable compared to like you getting student loans and all that stuff. Because like I noticed, like here when you study, like you actually rack up the student loans, and it's just crazy.
Well, I think it's far more expensive in the US than it is actually in Canada
Really?
to go to
Okay.
school. And then there's several provinces in Canada that have like tuition freezes. But I do know like to go to any sort of college university in the US, like you're looking at probably 60, 80 grand for a 4 year degree.
Yeah, it's a lot,
Whereas
right?
if you're going and flying back to the Philippines, that's maybe what, $3,000, $4,000 per ticket,
Not
like
even
round trip, right?
like
That's what I'm thinking
yeah.
of right now. So it might have been a lot less 15 years ago,
Oh
but
yeah.
then your dollar, like if your parents were sort of paying or helping you in that situation, then their American dollar would have stretched a lot further for
Oh yeah,
you to be in the
definitely.
Philippines.
Yeah.
So actually, I think what you did was genius because you got your, was it a diploma, a bachelor's or
Bachelors.
bachelor's degree in the Philippines and then sort of came out without debt.
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember what we were doing before is because you can already know, like, like ahead of time what the schedule is gonna, when the school date will be for the starting and ending and all that stuff. So what we would do before is that we would book it like probably like a year ahead, so it's still way cheaper. So I think like a round trip would like cost, I don't know, like $600. So that's not, like that is a steal compared to like you racking up student loans and all that stuff.
Yeah, so an extremely big steal because like
Yeah,
$600. Wow, yeah.
yeah, and
And so
then
I'm assuming when your parents came, they had jobs lined up or it didn't take them too long to find jobs.
well, my
Sort
dad was already here, so he already had a job. It was my mom who didn't have anything back then.
and how long did it take for her to?
I think a year or like almost a year. So it
Okay.
was just a little bit harder.
And were
But
you the oldest sibling or the
yeah,
youngest sibling? You were the
I'm the
oldest
older
sibling.
one now. Yeah.
And your other siblings, did they acclimate okay? Like,
I think for acclimation, I think she had a better acclimation compared to me.
how much
Because
younger
she
was
was
she?
younger. I think she was like 12 or 13. So,
Okay, so like
so she still
early
had that phase of
teens,
like, yeah.
yeah, that sort of thing. Um, so now, okay, so you came to the US. You weren't particularly happy with the education system and how they were treating you. You devised the plan to go back to the Philippines, finish out your program, and now you have your bachelor's in IT.
Yep.
So what's next? What happens next?
So so this is the crazy part. So you remember, like, we went to like different colleges, universities even. They all kept saying, "Oh, you have to go back to first year, right?" So remember that part. Once I graduated college in the Philippines, the school that I enrolled to for that, IT degree actually follows the American standard for IT. So I had it evaluated. Um, I don't know what's like the equivalent for Canada, but here like there's like West and like different other organizations that would evaluate your transcript
Yeah,
one for one if it would be like against like like the transcripts in the US. So long story short, it matched one of one. So basically that, like if I would have taken the route to like to stay in the US, and then, just redo the first year, one, that would have been like the biggest waste of time because that's 2 years that I would have to redo for what? Nothing. Because like it
yeah.
translated one of one. And like I remember like reading like the transfer evaluation, and it says there like you have basically a bachelor's of science in information technology based on the US curriculum. So I was like, oh wow. Like so it worked out. So that was like a huge win for me. But
And
yeah,
so
like
when you came back and you got it was evaluated 1-to-1, were you able to pick up work right away or?
so back in college I was doing internships and all that stuff. And then the company that I did an internship for, they wanted to hire me already. So like they wanted to absorb me right after I graduated. But obviously I had to decline that because it's in the Philippines and like the plan is like for me to eventually go back to the US and find a job. But basically what I used um the projects that I did there, and then I kind of just made like a portfolio website. And then I didn't exactly do work in like a traditional 9 to 5 sense. I did more of like freelancing. Um, because back in college, like they would really teach you like programming, networking, and all this stuff. But as I was doing college, like that's when I started figuring out that that's not really what I wanted to do IT wise. But what I wanted to do was a little bit of design,
Hmm.
and like I guess like you could say marketing and all that stuff. So I was focusing like my free time back in college doing that, and then eventually I learned how to build my own website, all the stuff. And then I would do projects like just kind of like freelancing projects. So that's kind of like my job. So there wasn't really much of a difficult transition because I can already do that in the Philippines while I was there. Like I was already doing freelancing work, and then I would get paid in US dollars anyway while I was there. So that was pretty cool. But I think the biggest downside of like doing school in the Philippines is like your time to get your citizenship resets. Because I think I don't really remember the law, but basically you can't leave for more than 180 days. I think within 5 years. But obviously, with me going back and forth for like two years, like that reset my time. So I think the biggest hurdle back then was to get a, a job in like, I don't know, like I guess like let's say if you want to get a job at Google, you're gonna need a citizenship, something like that. But that was like, like before anyway, but now like they hire everywhere.
Yeah, I think I think we have what's called a permanent resident
Yes.
card. But then before that, if you have, I, my friend is from France, my best friend's from France, and there's something before that that allowed him to work, to get a job somewhere.
I think that's
Um,
working like a kind of like a working visa or
Probably, actually, that makes sense to me. Is that his visa allowed him to work in Canada?
okay.
Um, so, because I think you guys is in the U.S. is green card citizenship.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there would be like other kinds of visa where you can be a student, you can do like religious non-profit stuff. You can do working visa and all that stuff. There's like different visas.
So in your form, you had mentioned, because up until now, like you finished school, I would assume it was an extra 2 years. You were close to 20 when you came back, right? And
Yeah.
had to reset all the times and all of that stuff. You had mentioned that you had no credit and no direction in life.
Yeah, definitely.
Talk about
Because
that.
so like after coming back, I was like, oh, awesome. Like job easy to get, whatever. But like now you're an adult essentially. You're no longer living with your parents and all that stuff. I mean, I did for a little bit, and then I eventually get a job and all that stuff. So moved out. No, but like let's say you want to buy a car. What do you need for that? A credit check.
Mm,
You want to get a credit card, build up your credit. They will give you like a bigger credit limit, and even like there's even like secure credit cards where like you would put in the money and then that will be your credit limit. Something like that. So like let's say you're born in the US, right? Let's say you have a really crappy credit, like you're just bad at managing money, or like something happened where it led you to that kind of like worst case scenario. So at that time, you would at least even have a bad credit, you know. But
mm.
like if you're an immigrant, you don't have any family who helped you build up your credit when you were still younger and all that stuff. Guess what? You have zero credit. So you had to build up everything from scratch. So like at that point I felt kind of lost because I was like, damn, like sure, like okay, you have a degree, you have some skills, but you're not really all that. Like you're fresh from college, so like how are you supposed to, I guess, like transition to like adulthood, especially now that you are going to be living in a completely different country that you're not used to, like 20 years your whole life essentially.
Yeah.
So like that was tough. And then I think that's kind of like where I discovered the military. So what I did was I joined the Navy. Um, then I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like I only knew that like my passion was in computer, like technology, like nerd stuff. So I wanted to do IT in the military. So I joined the Navy, but my dad kind of like talked me into joining because he said, "Oh, this is gonna help you get your citizenship faster." Because remember, like my time reset because I kept going to the Philippines. But in the military, usually you would get your citizenship as soon as you graduate boot camp.
As soon as you,
Graduate boot camp.
okay.
Are you familiar with military?
Well, because yes, but I think what's interesting is I did not realize that as an immigrant without citizenship that you could join
Yes.
the
So
armed forces.
as long as you have a green card, which basically means that you are a legal, um, not illegal, a legal resident in the
Yes.
United States, you can join. But obviously, if you don't have that kind of paperwork, you can't join. And
Okay,
then
that makes sense.
basically you would join, right? And then the reason why they expedite your citizenship is because one, you have to um show and like prove your loyalty to the United States because you now have become an asset to the United States. You're no longer a person essentially. What you are is a government asset, and
Yes.
you cannot be an asset if you are a citizen of another country.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the reason why they expedite your citizenship is one, you can't exactly be stationed to a lot of commands without a citizenship. Why? Because if you don't have a citizenship, you won't get a secret clearance, a top secret, or any kind of clearance. Because that requires citizenships, and you can't pledge your allegiance to the country if you are if you are legally um if you are le- if you are legally a citizen of another country.
This makes
So
sense. Yes.
that's why they expedite it. So I thought, oh wow, that's really cool, because like my dream when I was younger was like, oh, I want to work for Google and stuff, or like I don't know, like some kind of like programming job, where like you deal with like large database models, where like you're like I like to think that like I want to do enterprise stuff compared to like small to medium sized business um applications, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So that was ultimately like the goal when I joined. Like looking back, it's honestly selfish because like I wanted to get my citizenship so I could get my clearance and then basically kind of like speed it up. But
But selfish maybe, but I'm assuming you did join, you got accepted, you did your boot camp, you got your expedited citizenship,
yes,
and then you carried out, I think it's 4 years. Is it 4 years that you have to
yeah,
do? And did
I'm
you
still
stay
in.
beyond that, or did you just do the
Yeah,
one?
I'm still active duty right now.
Oh, you are. So I did not know
Yeah,
this. So you are
yeah.
a Navy, not a Marine. Marine? Navy.
I'm Navy.
Navy. So, okay, so like this was not on your form, and I think that this is really interesting. So you joined the Navy, but like, so you went through boot camp, which I know is definitely going to be really hard. But then, like, where did you get placement in the Navy?
Um, the first one I was stationed. What is it in Virginia, and then
Okay.
eventually I got a station in California, and then the next one was like what, Guantanamo Bay.
Oh,
Yeah, and then I came back basically.
okay. So I mean, like Virginia, California, pretty chill, like
Yeah, yeah, and
stateside.
then
Guantanamo Bay,
yep.
like that must have been different,
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely.
And what was your role in the army? Was it computing or
Actually, since when I joined, I didn't get like I wasn't a citizen, so you can't be an IT if you don't have that. That is one of the requirements. Like you need to be able to possess a clearance, but you can't if you don't have a citizenship. So initially, um, I applied for a job where it does not require for you to have a clearance per se.
okay?
Um, so because like otherwise, like you would come in as an undesignated sailor, which means you will be working like odd jobs until you figure out what you want to do and all that stuff. But luckily, when I was picking a job, um, so you would meet with the classifier. That's what we call them. And then this classifier will tell you, okay, this is your options based on your score when you did your test. And then one of the options, and then I remember I was like, well, which one is it that you're on your computer a lot? Because I like computers. And then because he already explained that I can't do IT because of the citizenship and clearance issue. So I was like, okay, what is the next good thing? And then it's basically about finance and HR.
Okay.
So basically that's what I did. And then looking back though, like honestly, I feel like that's like the best thing that could have happened because like IT in the Navy is not like IT in the real world where like you're I don't want to say you're not changing stuff for the better, but you're also what do you call this? You're not doing advanced stuff per se.
You're
Like
not
you're
designing.
limited. No, definitely not. And
Like
like
you're
it's
more
like
on the
a lot of like
defensive side, right? And like,
it's more of like tech support.
oh, okay.
So I was like, I don't want to do that, like so luckily, when I joined I didn't have that option, otherwise that would have been what I've been doing. So yeah. And then like I stayed in the Navy. I'm in like what, over 10 years now. So I'm basically halfway there. 10 more years I get to retire and all that stuff. So super cool. And then but again, like my passion was never being in the Navy, was never finance or HR. Do I like money? Yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't? But at the same time, that's not my passion. Like I like IT, like designing. I like marketing and all that stuff. So eventually, what I did was like I saved up like Navy paycheck since like since I was like a junior sailor. Um, and then what I would do is like I would hire my college classmates back in the Philippines to build up like softwares for me.
Okay,
So
that's smart.
so basically, like they call it outsourcing now, right?
Yes.
I didn't know what there was no term for it before. I was just a happy old, happy young me who was like, I just wanted to hang out with my college friends. Even though like they're in the Philippines and I'm in the US, I wanted to hang out with them, play with them, like play computer games with them, but also like do something fun. So I would like hire them to do like, small modules of like softwares. And then eventually I would get a package. And then once it's packaged, I would sell it to businesses in the US. So that's what I did. And then, yeah, like those softwares, they're still working until now. And then we basically use that to build off one, like kind of like a software slash marketing, kind of business, like side hustle. But also it allowed me to help my wife um, build up her own business. So hers is a dog boarding business. That was what I mentioned in the former thing. I don't know if I did, but basically we started this business that she has back in May of 2022, and then first year didn't really make a lot of money, honestly. Like I think we only made like 30k, and then but in 2023 we scaled that from basically zero since the start of the year, and then by the end of the year we hit six figures with the business. And then
And so dog
yeah.
boarding as in like kennels. So like people can
Um
go away and they can leave their dog with your wife
yes, but
to
without cages.
without cages. So okay, so free
Yeah.
roaming, that
Yep.
sort of thing. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So
And
a
then
humane sort of dog kennel boarding, or not
exactly.
kennel boarding sort of
Yeah.
place.
And then
Like,
our business is actually what led us to buy our home. Um because back then we were living in an apartment essentially when we started. And then it's funny because the apartment didn't exactly allow pets or like any type of animals, but literally everybody who lives there like has an animal or two.
mm,
So that's kind of like how we got started with the dog boarding. But I and then I like marketing, so like naturally I also like sales.
yes.
So I was like doing kind of like some kind of like the math, double quote, and I was like, well, this is a numbers game, like one, like eventually when you charge more, you would get um you would obviously get better sales, but also like if you have the capacity to take more without really overwhelming yourself, um then you would get more money in a day compared to like limiting yourself to like a number of people. But that was kind of like also another kind of like a trigger point for us. I told my wife, I was like, hey, let's buy a house. And then this is like when the markets was like like the bidding wars for like buying a home was starting to go down, but also the interest rates were starting to go up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like like now the market's like insane interest rates essentially. So she was like, "Are you insane? Like, are you insane? Like, nobody want to buy a house now because like interest rates are going up." I was like, "No, no, no. Let's just do it. It's gonna work." You know. And she's like also really good with numbers. So she was also thinking about numbers and all this stuff because I think she did finance for business in college.
Okay.
So I was like, like kind of like like look, I have the skills. I'm doing this for other businesses. Like I literally built softwares to help businesses, so I know I can help grow this business. And then luckily, like she has faith in me, and she followed through. And then yes, that's basically like how we reach six figures in for that business. And then naturally, like you can't really purchase like I guess like a house that's a little bit more on the expensive side if you don't have the credit. So we like we basically just work together to like build up our credit and all that stuff. And then yeah, it allowed us to get us a home instead of us renting and all that stuff.
It's
So
amazing though. And I think that you're really spot on because I think when you're a business owner, there's a sweet spot,
yeah,
right? When it comes to like balance of how much to charge, how much to take on while not sacrificing too much of oneself to make it really work and a beneficial like sort of endeavor. So you own a home, yeah, you're an active duty naval officer.
oh
Did I
no,
say
no,
that right?
I'm enlisted. So officers like different, but yeah,
Okay,
I'm on
so
the
you're what
enlisted side.
now? I'll
I'm
try to get
enlisted.
you listed,
I'm enlisted.
enlisted.
Yeah, but yeah,
Okay,
basically you can just call me a sailor. Everybody's a
okay.
sailor.
But you have the uniform.
Yep.
Okay, that is that's really cool. So I mean, so it's interesting how you went in for to expedite your citizenship, but it really turned into sort of a lifelong career where you can see yourself retiring,
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
right? And then because you have that, you were able to hire your friend back in the Philippines to like help you build softwares. And then in addition to that, you were able to help your wife really scale her business in that
Mm.
process and then also buy yourself a home,
Yeah.
right? So, I think that that's really cool how and I enjoy those types of stories when it comes to people who life doesn't quite end up how we plan it, but oftentimes life ends up better,
Yeah.
right? It might not be how we envisioned, but it most likely is better, and things work out. So your company that you own is Enzon Media.
Yeah.
And anybody who's interested in taking a look at that can go to Enzon, so Enzon media.com. And so you turn our websites into marketing machines. And
Essentially, yeah.
so, you know, this is interesting. I'm still starting out, and like perhaps, we'll do business together one day down the road.
Awesome.
But for anybody who's listening who wants to, because you do a lot, actually. You do website design, SEO, reputation management, digital punch cards, which I don't know what that is, and then accessibility compliance.
Yes.
um, so you do actually offer a full suite with your business.
Yeah.
So, you know for anybody looking to have websites designed, if you go on this website, enzonmedia.com, you can see their portfolio and the different organizations that they've worked with. One caught my eye, and that was Terry, right? And I'm like, oh, that's really pretty. Like, I like the background, I like, that sort of thing. But then one of the things that I find, and I think I told you right before we started filming, is I'm technologically inclined enough to be able to like use stuff, like use softwares, that sort of thing. But I'm not technical in the sense of video editing very well, or like, website editing or things like that. And so SEO I find to be an absolutely fascinating realm of
Absolutely. I love SEO.
it's interesting. And I'll tell you this quick story, and I had someone reach out to me not too long ago, like just randomly, and say, saw your website, thought it was great, loved the videos. Not the website, sorry, YouTube. It was the YouTube that he
Okay.
saw. And but he was like, you're not getting as many views as you could be. And I'm like, oh. And he had just sort of said, your keywords in your website are not good, your descriptions aren't good. Like, if you change them and make sure your titles and things are keyword rich, then
Yep.
you'll get better views. And so I was like, oh, thanks for the heads up, all of those things. So I went and I actually like did some Googling. Then I went back and I like created better titles. And then like overnight I was going from like 7, 8 views per video on a short to like 400 plus. And I was
Awesome.
like, oh. So I'm like,
Yeah,
the SEO works
it
for
does.
anybody that wants assistance with it. Enzon Media can help you with that. And then one of the messaging, what your messaging was to me was really great as well. So what you wrote here is to get out there and do it. Even small steps can help you achieve your big dreams. Never stop achieving your dreams, and do not be stuck in, and I love this, analysis paralysis.
That's
So
perfect.
tell us about that.
Well, I think like it's more of a message to myself than everyone else, because like I tend to like do a lot of research, and then sometimes like I would have like things that like I'm really interested in doing and all this stuff, but then I keep doing research and all that stuff. So you just keep analyzing and all that stuff, and then you end up not taking action. And like there are things that I eventually took action on, obviously. But also, like, when you get stuck in that kind of like limbo, you're never gonna get ahead because you're always just gonna think, oh, what if, oh, what about this, all that stuff. Instead of you just doing it, and all that stuff, taking action. Because like a lot of times, like when we start something, we get passionate about it. We have like a big, you know, big chunk of like curiosity in us. But like your curiosity will eventually turn into anxiety with you asking way too many questions in your head instead of you just doing
Overthinking it.
it. And then because like once you take actions, like the problems that you're thinking that you might encounter, you end up not encountering even. Like it's just all in your head kind of thing. And I think like it just came from like me being in the military because like in the military like you have to be decisive. Especially like if you're deployed and all this stuff, like you can't act like, oh, I have 30 days to think about this. You don't. Like your time is now, kind of deal. Like so. I think like being in the military like taught me that. So to me, like if I say, and like I do this to myself a lot, where like let's say, okay, so let's say like we're doing this podcast, right? Like
Yeah.
before doing this, I was like I am a big introvert, like I don't really like talking to people and all that stuff. But I made a Facebook post on my profile. I said I'm gonna do 100 podcast shows. I want to be in 100 different podcasts. Like I don't know how this is gonna help me down the line and all that stuff. But to me, that is the way for me to one share my story, to connect with new people, and three to like get me out of my shell because I'm a very deep introvert and like me talking to people helps me build up my confidence, all that stuff. So like had I not start doing that, like I would still be thinking, oh my god, like I'm having this anxiety, like what if I fail, and all that stuff. Instead of me just doing it, like I started this goal like a couple months ago, I think like last year, and I think this is like 11th or 12th podcast now. So, it's still a long way to go, but it's starting, small steps, small wins, get to bigger wins. So,
You said that was sort of more of a message for you, but I think a lot of people can relate and take away from that because we all have hopes and dreams. We all tend to fall behind fear or anxiety. Just do it.
yeah,
You're
definitely.
never going to be perfect the first time around. You're never actually going to be ready, right? Like, and there's never going to be perfect timing.
Never.
It doesn't
Always
exist.
something. Yeah.
You just got to throw yourself into the mix. And so,
Yep.
like, I get that because, this is my 20th podcast ever. I
It's
started
awesome.
this
See?
year. So, and it's something I've always wanted to do, but fear and anxiety and analysis paralysis
It creeps up on you.
was real in here. And so here we are, right? And it for I can tell everybody, and I think you could say the same thing, is that when you do something and you just keep doing it, it gets easier.
Yeah. And you become better at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Thank
being a
you.
guest on my show, Pod My Noggin. Anybody who wants to check out Enzon Media, I will link it as well. And yeah, if you need SEO help or website design, RG is the place to go. So
Thank you.
until next time, get out there and live your wildest dreams. And thanks for tuning in to Pod My Noggin.